Hi. Some of you got this last Thursday when we had class, but unfortunately, because of the speaker that we had, some of you did not. So this is for you to take notes on the Romanticism piece of paper. Third hour, you received this from Mr. Judge in class. And fourth hour, we started this and you will need to finish it. So we're going to go over Romanticism. And Romanticism isn't the idea that things are romantic and you have to give me flowers and chocolates. Romanticism is the idea that the literature is based on emotion. This is where the Mount Rushmore of American lit writers are. When you go to England and you study American lit, you are going to study the Romantics. Edgar Allan Poe, Washington Irving, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Herman Melville, Emily Dickinson, Walt Whitman. These are the big guns. And Romanticism is not, again, not about lovey-dovey and Cupid's arrow, but about creating an emotion. So what are the characteristics or the elements of Romanticism? Sorry, there was a little glitch there. The first element is that it took place around the 1800s and it ends at the Civil War. It ends at the Civil War because Romanticism is fundamentally optimistic style. Even though we had some really dark literature like Selling Your Soul to the Devil, it was a romantic and idealistic time in our history. However, when Civil War rolled around, there was nothing idealistic or romantic about that. Unlike the Age of Reason, which focused completely on logic and rhetoric, this appealed on people's emotion. How to make someone scared, how to make someone feel guilty, to take sadness. So it was all emotions. During the Puritan era and also during the time period of the Age of Reason, we were thinking beyond ourselves. We were thinking about what is good for society. But during the Romantic era, it really becomes an individualistic focus. The authors are no longer concerned about what's going to happen for social good. They're more concerned about my soul. And that's why there's lots of stories actually about the devil land, about people selling their souls to someone. And it is through looking at an individual, a character in an individual, you will understand and maybe society will change. It's extremely imaginative. All I have to do is say Edgar Allan Poe and you know what I'm talking about. But at the same time, it focused on the beautiful aspects of of literature and art and music. Those of you that are in art with Miss West know that there is an era called the Romantics that used wonderful paint techniques. I love the Romantics in terms of painting because they focused on the beauty of nature and so on. And finally, there is a nationalistic element. There wasn't an America prior to this. And now all of a sudden we have a new country, a new society. And they started to focus on that in literature. So the settings started to be in the United States rather than in England. Now this is going to be hard for you to do as a smartboard presentation. So I'm going to click on them and then hopefully you'll be able to say them and then I will slide them. So the Age of Reason or Romanticism, did it have fiction? Which area did fiction go? Romanticism was in fiction. Which Age of Reason or Romanticism was imaginative? Definitely Romanticism. Rhetoric, things like parallelism, rhetorical devices, anaphora, that's Age of Reason. Looking at the individual rather than society's good, Romanticism. Focusing on your intuition, the idea that your gut is going to tell you it all. Nationalistic pride, Romanticism. Whereas no longer nationalistic pride because liberty was dealt with during the Age of Reason. Age of Reason was all about the social good. Emotional, Romanticism. Logical, Age of Reason. 1800s, Romanticism. 1700s, Age of Reasons. Ethos, pathos, and logos. There's that rhetoric, Age of Reason. Essays, speeches, and pamphlets, Age of Reason. Where was authors, scientists, and politicians were all incorporated into one, Age of Reason. Whereas Romanticism was about the authors only. As I just said, the elements of Romanticism, it focused on fiction, and they were only authors. They weren't scientists, politicians, presidents. They served only as authors. And we're going to take a look at a PowerPoint now. And in this PowerPoint, what I want you to do is to continue to take notes on the back side. The definition of Romanticism, again, is a movement in art and literature and music that focused on emotion. And it can be classified by the 5 I's. Okay? The first I is imagination. Imagination, of course, is the idea of emphasizing that over reason. Imagination is necessary for all art. And one author went so far as to claim that imagination was intellectual intuition. Before I go any further, if there's something that I want you to jot down in your notes in terms of copying, you will see it highlighted or I will say something. Intuition is the next, and of course intuition is the idea of like listening to your gut, your feelings, your instincts. This is huge in transcendentalism, and some authors believe that it was the most powerful feeling that we had is our intuition. Idealism. Idealism is a concept that we can make the world a better place. That is a really good definition to write down behind it because idealism is sometimes difficult to describe. So that first bullet should definitely be written down. It refers to the theory that emphasizes the spirit, the mind, and language. It's making the world the way it is. Some people believe that the mind forces the world we perceive to take shape. And Immanuel Kant, if you guys take any kind of philosophy or psychology, you will study him. Okay. Inspiration. Inspiration is the idea that God is an inspired creator, not a technical master. You know, it used to mean that God was like a clockmaker, but now it is the idea that God is this creator that puts things together for us. And finally, individuality. Romantics thought individuality were huge. Some of the things I do want you to write down is many of the people during this time period became women's rights advocates or abolitionists, and they started to really consider that individuality is paramount. When we get to Walt Whitman, we are going to study him to such a degree because he is going to really talk about this concept of individuality. Song of Myself and I Celebrate Myself. Okay? The origin started in the French Revolution, and you'll notice that some very famous people will come with that. It appeared in the arts. So this first bullet here I want you to jot down. It was not only in literature, but it was in the visual arts like painting and sculptures, but it was also in our music. We saw, and they started to have common themes that you would have found way back in the Middle Ages when you were studying Shakespeare, chivalry and courtly love, and so excuse me, literature and the arts, ballets and operas would definitely have dealt with these. And Shakespeare became the vogue again. For a long time, Shakespeare was kind of out of the movement. But during the Romantic era, he came back with a vengeance. Again, the visual arts. There was the idea that you had on one side, you had a neoclassical art, and then you had the Romantic art. Let's see if we can look at some examples. That would be neoclassic right there. Look at how stark the images are, the colors, and so on. And then you have the paintings. Look at the movement and kind of like using the way the shapes are. Just, I definitely am a lover of Romantic art over neoclassical art. In music, the classics were Wolfgang and Mozart and Haydn. In the Romantic, we had Chopin, Liszt, Chopin, Chopin, Liszt, and Tchaikovsky. And again, we don't need all of this kind of here. Okay. So in America, Romanticism was the strongest in literature. It wasn't as strong in music or art. And in America here, we loved the idea of supernatural and Gothic themes. And this is where Transcendentalists showed up. Okay. And and that concludes our study here. And so what I would like you to do now is that we're going to go and use that information that we have and apply it to the Highwayman.